It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Eva Longoria, one of Hollywood's most glamorous stars, had just walked down the aisle in a breathtaking Parisian wedding. The paparazzi were eating it up, and fans across the world were convinced they were witnessing a real-life fairy tale. Eva and NBA star Tony Parker looked like the perfect couple, two celebrities at the peak of their fame, smiling like nothing could ever go wrong. But behind that dazzling smile, Eva had no idea that the man she had just married was already planting the seeds of betrayal. And worse, the woman he was allegedly flirting with was at their wedding. The story sounds too dramatic to be real, but it's exactly what happened. Eva, known for her iconic role on Desperate Housewives, had always guarded her private life carefully. She was ambitious, successful, and admired, not just for her talent, but for being poised under pressure. So, when she tied the knot with Tony Parker in 2007, it seemed like the perfect match. They were both powerful, attractive, and insanely successful in their own worlds. But it didn't take long for cracks to start forming in the foundation of their picture-perfect relationship. In the beginning, their marriage appeared solid from the outside. They vacationed in Europe, made red carpet appearances, and always had kind words for each other in interviews. But behind closed doors, something much darker was unfolding. According to several reports, even before the honeymoon phase had ended, there were whispers. Rumors about Tony's behavior that Eva tried to brush off. Maybe they were just jealous. Maybe it was media noise. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then, in 2010, the dam finally broke. Eva reportedly found hundreds of text messages between Tony and another woman. But this wasn't just any woman. She was married. Not only that, she was allegedly the wife of one of Tony Parker's own NBA teammates. That revelation didn't just burn their marriage to the ground, it torched Tony's reputation in the league and left Eva blindsided. It's the kind of betrayal that turns your stomach. One moment, you're planning your future with someone. The next, you're realizing they've been texting another woman right under your nose, possibly even from across the dinner table. What made things even worse was the timing. The texts weren't some ancient skeletons from before they got serious. They were recent. Some sources even alleged that the communication had been going on for months. Eva filed for divorce shortly after the discovery, citing irreconcilable differences. But everyone knew the real story. It wasn't just one bad text or a moment of weakness. This was ongoing betrayal. And for a woman who had tried so hard to maintain her dignity in the spotlight, it was a deeply humiliating chapter. But that wasn't even the full extent of the damage. Rumors began surfacing that Tony hadn't just betrayed Eva with one woman. He had a pattern. Other sources claimed that Tony had been in contact with multiple women throughout their marriage, including staying connected with old flames through Facebook. It painted a picture of a man who was never truly committed, despite the elaborate ceremony and romantic gestures. And for Eva, each new revelation must have felt like another dagger to the heart. She didn't speak much publicly about the betrayal at first, but one detail said more than any press statement ever could. Eva had gotten a tattoo of their wedding date, inked in Roman numerals, as a symbol of their eternal bond. After the split, she had it removed, quietly and without much fanfare. But the symbolism was clear. She wasn't just erasing the ink, she was wiping away the illusion of a love story that had never been real to begin with. And yet, despite all the pain and humiliation, Eva didn't spiral. She didn't launch into a public revenge campaign or lash out. Instead, she chose a different path. She stayed calm, collected, poised, even as the media frenzy exploded around her. But that didn't mean she wasn't hurting. What happened next would reveal just how deep the wounds really went. After the betrayal became public, Eva Longoria did what many people in her position wouldn't have done. She didn't turn it into a spectacle. There were no explosive interviews, no fiery social media takedowns, no public airing of dirty laundry. But just because she stayed silent didn't mean she wasn't struggling behind the scenes. In fact, Eva later admitted that she was deeply shaken. The image she projected, elegant, powerful, unshakable, was crumbling. And beneath that surface was a woman battling emotions she had never wanted to face. One of the most revealing moments came during an interview years later, when Eva opened up about how the betrayal impacted her sense of self. She confessed to feeling insecure, jealous, and even inadequate. For someone who had always seemed so sure of herself, these admissions were gut-wrenching, but they were also deeply human. Eva talked about how, for a long time, she believed she wasn't good enough, that if her husband had looked elsewhere, something must have been wrong with her. It was the kind of self-doubt that eats you alive from the inside, and it didn't help that the entire world was watching. Paparazzi followed her every move, tabloids speculated wildly about who would date her next, and fans were divided between sympathy and judgment. And through it all, Eva stayed composed. But later, she would describe that period as one of the lowest points in her life. She said she was inconsolable. It wasn't just about the cheating. It was about realizing that she had invested her heart into a lie. And here's where Eva's story takes an unexpected turn. Instead of sinking into bitterness or chasing revenge, she took a different route, self-reflection. She started therapy. She worked on healing not just from the betrayal, but from the emotional wounds that had long gone unacknowledged. In her own words, she said therapy helped her realize something powerful. It wasn't about me. She finally understood that Tony's actions were not a reflection of her worth, but of his. This moment of clarity became a turning point. It allowed her to step back and stop internalizing his betrayal as her failure. That realization might sound simple, but for anyone who's been cheated on, it's anything but. Eva described it as freeing, and from that point on, she started to rebuild. Not just her career or her public image, but her inner peace. And she didn't do it by jumping into the next big relationship or making a splashy comeback. Instead, she focused on herself. She traveled. She threw herself into charity work. She worked behind the scenes in Hollywood, building her resume as a producer and director. She focused on advocacy and used her voice to support causes she cared about. She refused to be defined by heartbreak. But despite all her progress, there was still one lingering question. Would she ever trust love again? After what happened with Tony Parker, most people would build emotional walls so high that no one could break through. But Eva's story didn't end in cynicism, because just a few years later, something surprising happened. She met someone new, but not through a Hollywood party or celebrity circle. It was through a friend, a blind date of all things. His name was José Bastón, a businessman from Mexico. He wasn't a movie star or an athlete. He wasn't the flashiest guy in the room. But he was exactly what Eva needed: steady, grounded, and private. At first, she wasn't even that excited, but something about him felt different, real, safe. They kept their relationship quiet at first, away from cameras and red carpets. And maybe that's why it worked. There were no headlines, no media pressure, just two people getting to know each other. And over time, that quiet comfort grew into something undeniable. In 2015, they got engaged. In 2016, they tied the knot in a beautiful ceremony in Mexico. And this time, there were no hidden text messages, no scandals, no betrayal. But Eva's healing wasn't complete until one more miracle happened, something that would completely reshape her life. For someone who had already reinvented herself so many times, actress, entrepreneur, activist, Eva Longoria was about to take on the most unexpected role of all: motherhood. And the way it happened felt like the final chapter of her healing journey. In 2018, Eva and José Bastón welcomed their son, Santiago, into the world. And just like that, the woman who had once been defined by heartbreak became something completely new: a mother, a protector, and the center of a whole new kind of love. Eva had spoken in the past about not knowing if she would ever have kids. Her career had always come first, and for years she was unsure whether that chapter was meant for her. But with José, everything felt different. And when Santiago arrived, it wasn't just her personal life that shifted, her entire worldview did. She started prioritizing family above everything. And in every interview since, you can hear it in her voice: the calm, the focus, the peace. But don't think for a second that motherhood meant she slowed down. If anything, Eva became even more driven, but in a different way. She used her platform more intentionally, taking on film and TV projects that aligned with her values. She directed. She produced. She became one of the few Latina women in Hollywood to break into executive roles behind the camera. And all the while, she was raising her son with a sense of rootedness she never had in her previous life. The contrast between her marriage to Tony Parker and her life with José Bastón couldn't be more stark. Where Parker brought chaos and betrayal, José brought calm and consistency. He wasn't interested in fame. He was already successful in his own right. But he had no desire to compete with Eva or the spotlight she carried. That balance gave Eva something she had never really known in a relationship: emotional safety. And it's not like the couple hasn't faced challenges. Every relationship does. But there's a noticeable difference in how Eva speaks now. She no longer seems like she's trying to convince the world or herself that everything's okay. She just is okay. That quiet confidence only comes when you've been through the worst and still found your way to happiness. But even as she thrived personally, Eva knew she had a responsibility that went beyond her own life. In interviews, she's been brutally honest about the pressures women face in relationships, especially in the public eye. She's talked openly about how society encourages women to stay silent when they're hurt, to hold it all together, to pretend. And Eva, who once did just that, is now encouraging other women to speak up, take control, and walk away when they're not being valued. She's become an advocate for change in more ways than one, not just in Hollywood, but in the way we talk about relationships, healing, and moving on. She's no longer just known for Desperate Housewives or red carpet glamour. She's now recognized for her brain, her business savvy, and her ability to turn pain into purpose. And for many fans who followed her story from the beginning, it's been inspiring to watch that evolution happen in real time. And while she's kept much of her relationship with José private, the rare glimpses she shares show a woman who is finally at peace. Whether it's beach vacations with their son or quiet dinner dates captured by paparazzi, there's a softness to Eva now. She laughs more, she looks happier, and she speaks with a kind of emotional clarity that only comes after surviving the fire. Still, people haven't forgotten how her journey began, and to this day, some fans still wonder, how did she not see it coming with Tony Parker? How could someone as smart and successful as Eva have been blindsided so completely? The truth is, betrayal doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone, even the strongest among us. But here's what makes Eva Longoria's story stand out. She didn't let betrayal define her. She didn't let heartbreak destroy her. Instead, she used it. She turned it into fuel. And what came out on the other side wasn't just recovery, it was transformation. From heartbreak queen to power player, from betrayed wife to fulfilled mother, she rewrote her own narrative. But there's still one part of her story that many people forget, and it might be the most surprising chapter of all. By now, you'd think Eva Longoria's story had been fully told. Public betrayal, personal transformation, new love, motherhood. It all sounds like the perfect arc, but there's a lesser-known layer to her journey that even longtime fans often miss. Something that shows just how far Eva has come, and how she turned her most painful chapter into something quietly powerful. Years after her split from Tony Parker, something unexpected happened. They reconnected, not as lovers, not even as friends, but as adults who had grown, who had changed, and who were capable of something very rare in Hollywood: mature closure. According to several sources, Eva and Tony have since maintained a respectful, civil dynamic. No drama, no lingering hostility. And maybe that's the most underrated part of this entire story, because closure doesn't always come from an apology. It doesn't always come from justice or revenge. Sometimes it comes when you no longer need those things. When you've healed so deeply that the past no longer owns you. That's where Eva is now. And that level of emotional clarity, that's something you can't fake. Not even in front of the cameras. It's even more impressive when you realize how messy things could have been. After all, Tony Parker didn't just cheat. He cheated in the most public, humiliating way possible. The media frenzy was relentless. Fans took sides. The NBA was buzzing. And for a while, it seemed like Eva would never escape being the woman he betrayed. But instead of shrinking under that label, she built something stronger, something lasting. And that's why her story still resonates years later. Eva Longoria didn't become an icon because she never got hurt. She became one because of how she handled it when she did. And now, when you look at her life, it's almost hard to believe how far she's come. She's directing feature films, launching global beauty campaigns, advocating for Latinx representation in media, raising a son who adores her. And she's doing it all on her terms, without ever needing to drag her past along for sympathy points. She doesn't need to name names or reopen old wounds. Her silence on the details is its own kind of power. But make no mistake, her silence isn't weakness. It's strength. It's proof that healing doesn't have to be loud. That sometimes the most powerful revenge is peace. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. We live in a world obsessed with scandal, with cancel culture, with tearing people down. But Eva Longoria's story reminds us that you can survive betrayal, rebuild quietly, and still come out on top. Stronger, wiser, and more grounded than ever before. She never got the apology she truly deserved in public, but she didn't need it. She gave herself the closure that Tony Parker never could, and in doing so, she became more than a Hollywood name. She became a symbol of self-worth, of dignity, of starting over, even when the cameras are rolling and the whole world is watching. So, next time you see a headline about someone's love life falling apart, remember Eva. Remember that behind every breakup, every betrayal, there's a real person who still has to wake up, rebuild, and move forward. And Eva didn't just move forward, she rose. Because while her love life may have started with a betrayal, her story ended with something much bigger: self-respect, clarity, and peace. And sometimes that's more powerful than any Hollywood ending. So, what do you think? Was Eva Longoria's transformation one of the best comeback stories in Hollywood? Or does it still leave you wondering what might have been? Let us know in the comments. And if you made it this far, you're clearly into stories that go deeper than the headlines. So make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next time we expose what's really going on behind the scenes of your favorite stars. There's always more to the story, and trust me, what's coming next will leave you speechless.